Hello there, my name's Gina Gardner and I'd like to welcome you to this presentation about the Enlightened Leadership Programme. It's a multidimensional approach to personal and leadership transformation. The quality of leadership has an enormous impact on a business's productivity and profitability, but it also has a huge impact on the quality of people's lives. Depression, anxiety and stress are on the increase, and I think poor leadership is a huge contributory factor. So welcome to the Genuinely You Enlightened Leadership Programme. It's a unique programme designed to create lasting and positive change by supporting personal and spiritual development alongside comprehensive leadership development. The research shows that within 6 months of being on a leadership programme, most people are only using between 7 and 10% of what they've learned. And the Enlightened Leadership Programme is designed to make sure that that is very different. So our core objective: in order to lead others well, you first need to transform into the best version of yourself and lead from a place of wholeness. Working on yourself, doing the inner work, means that those changes in terms of the leadership component become really embedded, so that as time goes on, you don't lose what you've learned, but you actually start to use it and it becomes more and more part of who you are and what you do. I think it's important to look at the real cost of poor leadership, and we're going to start with the personal cost. There's a huge impact on our physical health when we're stressed and depressed or anxious. And we know that this is on the increase. In the UK alone, over half the prescriptions that we have are for antidepressants. But our physical health is often the thing that we notice and are prepared to talk about. There's been huge amounts of research, and we know that when we're stressed, there's an impact on our quality of sleep. We know that the quality of sleep is very important. During sleep time, we go through the day and we process what's happened. They now know there's a direct link between insomnia and it shortening your life. Now, part of that is high blood pressure, and an increased risk of heart attack and stroke is created through stress. It has a negative impact on our immune system, so you're more likely to pick up bugs. But in the longer term, you're more likely to develop a more serious disease like cancer, diabetes, and so on. And there's been links between stress and putting on weight, and obesity, once again, increases the rate of other illnesses. Mental health. In the past, it was something that wasn't talked about much, but these days, more and more people are open about the fact that they are stressed, that they're dealing with anxiety, depression, a lack of confidence. And one of the things that happens when we are stressed is you're much more likely to suffer from imposter syndrome. If you're a leader who feels that you're out of your depth and you're struggling to manage your staff, it feels like herding cats, then that's going to have a big impact on your confidence and your mood. But just as important, if you're on the receiving end of somebody who is a poor leader, then lack of confidence, a feeling of being that life is out of control, are all going to contribute to unhappiness, irritability. That has an impact on relationships, both at work and at home. Irrationality. We know that there's a direct link between stress and the quality of the decisions that people make, and ultimately burnout. And if you think about how many people you know who are struggling with burnout, it's an increasing problem and it's hugely costly. There is an impact on personal relationships, broken relationships because people can't leave work behind, or simply because they're stressed and they are irritable. I mean, think about how often you take your work home. And even if you're not taking work home and physically working on those activities, are you thinking about your work rather than focusing on your children or your partner? The result of that is broken relationships, that leads to fragmented families. And again, the research shows that children who are brought up in single parent families, not simply because they're single parent, but because, it's challenging being a parent when there's two of you working together. But if there's just one of you on your own, then it makes life much more complicated. And that, of course, has an impact on finances. More about that in a moment. Loneliness is on the increase. And loneliness doesn't simply mean being on your own. There are many people who feel lonely even though they are in a relationship or they've got lots of friends. They feel isolated because they don't feel that they can talk about things and share them, because in some way being vulnerable is seen as being a weakness. But there is a significant impact on your financial status if you are affected by physical and mental ill health. Time off work, for example, and if you're in a job where you don't get paid for time off, that has significant, far-reaching impact on the quality of your life, your capacity to pay your rent or your mortgage. But I think one of the hidden costs is you're less likely to fulfill your true potential. And if that's the case, then your earning capacity becomes far more limited than it needs to. Now, poor leadership makes no business sense at all. The cost of poor leadership, I think, is completely under reported and under recognized, if you like. If you look at just absenteeism because of stress, we know that in the UK, the cost of lost productivity and efficiency from days off to do with stress alone is estimated at more than £70 billion a year. Just think about that. They also think that there is a problem with presenteeism. And presenteeism is when people are physically in work, but they are not firing on all cylinders because of stress, because of anxiety. And that has an impact on continuity. So absenteeism has a significant impact, but so does presenteeism. It causes delay in completing the work. It has a knock-on effect in terms of the team. Stress and anxiety and poor leadership lead to unhappy personal interaction because there's a huge impact. So, for example, if you've got a poor leader who can't make up their mind, who's consistently changing their decisions, people don't know where they are. If you have a leader who is one moment very matey and the next moment is shouting and hollering, team dynamics suffer. That leads to greater chances of tribunals, and there is a huge impact on the company in terms of the finances. The time and energy it takes to prepare a tribunal is huge, but also it has an impact on your reputation. If you can't keep your key staff and you're constantly having to induct new people, it's very costly. I was working with an organisation and they were in the process of replacing their manager for a particular department for the third time in a year. And I spoke to the general manager and said to them, what's the cost of that in terms of your time or other people's time inducting and training that person? What's the cost in terms of the quality of the interaction that goes on with your clients and customers? And it was huge. So keeping key staff is really important, and poor leadership makes that more difficult. But what a waste in terms of resources, personal resources, lost time, the resources that are wasted because of poor decision making. Poor leadership has an enormous impact on productivity, on profitability, on your reputation. It makes no sense to allow poor leadership to continue, whether you're the business owner or whether you're working within that organization as a leader. It's time to do something different. So let's look at the cost of poor leadership in society. If you think that half the prescriptions or over half the prescriptions are for antidepressants, Think about the time that's taken up with doctors and other health professionals in dealing with stress, anxiety, depression, things that could be avoided if the major contributory factor is poor leadership. And in the research it shows that whilst it's not the only reason, it is a significant factor in people's health. Then add the physical illnesses that come out of stress, high blood pressure, stroke, all of those things. The cost to the nation for healthcare is enormous. And if you're in America or another country where people the healthcare is done by insurance, just think of how much your premiums go up because the pressure on healthcare services and insurance is so huge. Poor decision making. As a society, we all deal with the aftermath of poor decision making made at governmental level. The big corporates making a decision have an impact on all our lives, and those decisions can be far-reaching. And again, the cost of fragmented families, both in terms of the family itself, but in the society as a whole, where a family is fragmented and children aren't doing well. Think about children going into care when families break down. They know that children who go into care have a much reduced life expectancy, a much reduced opportunities in terms of work, much reduced chance that they will successfully bring up other children. No blame to them. I've done some work in the interface between education and foster care and social services, and children in care have a real problem because their life is disrupted so much. So I'm not saying that there is a direct link, but there is a significant pressure on families where stress and anxiety are created by poor leadership, which comes way beyond just the productivity and profitability levels. So I've already said to you that to be an enlightened leader, that first you must lead yourself. You've got to model, lead by example. And I want to show you the interaction between our emotions, because our emotions are driven by our thoughts, as are our language and our behaviors. And all of our thoughts are driven by our beliefs. Now, our beliefs are those things that the way we see the world, and they're very often created early on in life. A parent, because they want a child to do well, keeps telling them that's not good enough. And instead of thinking about the outcome not being good enough, many children will internalize that and think, I'm not good enough. Or a remark by a teacher that you're stupid. And I'd like to think that teachers wouldn't say that, but I know from my clients that often that has been the case. That person takes on board, I'm stupid, and that limiting belief then colours their whole lives. Our thoughts are so important, and learning to be mindful, to think consciously, makes a huge difference. 95% of our thoughts are habitual. They lead to habitual emotions, habitual language, and habitual behaviours. And the problem with that is if those are based on negative beliefs, they have a huge and negative impact on our lives. Enlightenment, personal mastery and leadership refinement are the core components required for creating a new landscape of leadership. And this is at the heart of the Enlightened Leadership Programme. So as I say, in order to lead others, you must first lead yourself. Your thoughts, your emotions, your language, and your behaviours. Now, this is not a tick box exercise. This programme, I think, is the equivalent of the Iron Man or Woman of leadership courses, because it requires you to do the inner work. It requires you to face up to who you are and how you operate. Going back to that manager who had lost 3 of his managers in the space of a year, one of the conversation was, okay, so what was your part in this? How did you contribute to the fact that you had 3 failed leadership roles? And part of that was, did you choose the right person? Was that person inducted and trained appropriately? Did you monitor their performance, and were people given feedback in an appropriate way that helped them develop? And the general manager took on board that actually what needed to change most was the way in which they led the situation, and he's now working on it. At the core of any truly enlightened leader is a daily demonstration of how they think, how they interact due to emotions, how they use their language, how their behaviors pan out. And if you want good behavior from other people, you have to demonstrate it first and own it. So, I want you to think about the attributes and the values that enlightened leadership incorporates. The courage to do things that are right and to actually do things that are a bit scary. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And so you need the courage to step out of your comfort zone and to face who you are and to make some changes. You need the commitment to do it. Most people go for the grand gesture, and the grand gesture doesn't work. Just think how many people join the gym, buy all of the clothes, go to the gym the first time, get shown all of the machines, go at it like a bull at a gate, and then find that they're so achy that they don't want to go back. Most gyms earn more money from people who've paid their membership but don't go than they do from those who actually go. So enlightened leaders are committed to making the changes and making it work, not just for themselves, but for other people. They're up for the challenge. And enlightened leadership is about embracing the challenge and recognizing that it's an ongoing lesson. It's not done. You don't do the course and then put it into a box. It's an ongoing challenge to be even better. Leadership of any sort requires resilience, and for me, poor leadership very often is exacerbated because people don't have the resilience. They see failure as the end rather than failure being an opportunity to learn. It's my belief that there are two failures, two true failures. One is the failure to try, and the second is the failure to learn when something happens. You think about your life. You know, when something goes wrong, we learn so much more than we do when things go right. And this is true of leadership. And this is an approach, a culture, to creating a development culture rather than a culture of blame, is very much an integral part of being an enlightened leader. It's all about empowerment. When we step into our genuine power, it's not about dominion. It's not about, you do it my way or the highway. Genuine power means that you step into your power and you own it, and you are then able to recognize the potential in others, and you help them own their power to be the best that they can be. Self-mastery, and all of these, I'm not doing these in priority order. They are all just as important. But for me, self-mastery is the core. If you are going to model the behaviors that you want from other people, then you need to be the master of your own thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. It's no good saying to people, I don't want you to lose your temper. Being angry, being aggressive is not appropriate if you at times are angry and aggressive. If you talk about being moody and that people don't know from one day to the next whether you're going to be moody or not, you're giving a very mixed message. One of the things that many of the overall bosses, the senior decision makers, say when I start working with them is, I've got no time because people constantly come to me. They need me to check it. They need me to say it's okay. They need reassurance. And one of the things around enlightened leadership is that you develop within your team the independence to know what's right and to take ownership. And to do that, you have to train your people to think. Because if they're always worried about getting it wrong, they will consistently check in with you. So developing independence for yourself and for your team is an integral part of enlightened leadership. As a leader, one of your jobs, I believe, is to provide the inspiration for people. The faith, yeah, we can do this. We might not know how at the moment, but we can find the way, and we are going to do it together. And inspiration is a really important part of enlightened leadership. Doesn't mean you have to know all the answers, but you do need that faith that whatever's going on, we can find a way through this, and a productive way. Enlightened leadership is all about growth. Those companies that do very well but don't see that development has to be ongoing quickly fade and die. And if you look at the Fortune 500 and look at the top 10 companies, there are one or two that are always there, but the others are there for very brief time. And what I find interesting is that they don't drop to the bottom, to the next 20 or the 20 after that, but they disappear into obscurity. And that's because they've not taken on board the principle of growth. Contribution is so important. Stephen Covey talked about the servant master, and a servant master type leadership is about contributing to everybody's growth and performance, getting the team to see that their contribution is really important and is valued, that you're listened to, and even if people don't take up your idea, that your idea may have sparked somebody else into an idea that's the ultimate one that you choose. And contribution outside what's going on, and for me that's very tied up with a sense of purpose. And the sense of purpose is people recognizing and taking ownership of what they do. You know, it doesn't matter what job you do, whether you are, you are a brain surgeon, where the value and contribution of that job is very clear to see. But perhaps you're a cleaner and other people don't value your job. But actually, if you live in a world where nobody's cleaning, it would be very, very unpleasant very quickly. And I can remember saying to young staff who, perhaps were dismissive site staff and cleaners, you don't have to think about going into the toilets and finding them clean. That's done for you. Just think about how it would be if nobody cleaned for a day, a week, a year. And think then of the contribution they are making. Everybody within your organization or your family is capable of making a contribution, and that contribution needs to be valued. And enlightened leaders value the contribution and encourage everybody to do the same. It's a complex thing. It's not one thing. If one of these attributes and values was missing, then things don't work well. You need all of them delivered in a cohesive way. And that's what enlightened leadership is all about. Secondly, to be an enlightened leader, your leadership of others must demonstrate all of those things. I've said you need to model them. If you're not modeling those, then how can you expect other people to model them? But you also need to have a very clear vision. What is it you're about? Whether it's a vision for your family, and I would say to you, this is leadership for life. Whether it's a leadership for how you want your family and your children to grow up, or whether it's your organization or a department within your organization. In real terms, what does that vision look like? It's rather like having a lighthouse guiding the ships in stormy weather. You need that light to be a beacon, and the vision acts the same. We've already briefly talked about having a culture of development, not blame. A culture where people are valued. A culture where people are not problem dumpers, but are solution finders. And that all starts with you. Communication is key. I mean, so many times I work with organisations where the communication is fragmented, where people think that because they've sent an email that they have communicated. And there's no real understanding that unless people not only read it, but understand it in the manner to which you were intending, then true communication hasn't taken place. People need to take ownership of this, and it's no good just saying this is yours, get on with it. That's again back to the vision, back to the culture, the way in which this whole thing is communicated. But ultimately, enlightened leadership is about everyone having ownership of what you're trying to achieve, your purpose. And purpose, your why, should be a huge part of your vision. And if it's not, then people think, why should I bother? Ultimately, enlightened leadership is about everybody taking responsibility for their part in what goes on, and a shared responsibility, a collective responsibility for achieving whatever the vision, the goal, the purpose, the why is. And the relationships within a family, a department, an organisation, a community are really important. And those relationships have to be built on trust and respect, and for me, integrity. And those things have to be demonstrated and earned. They're not just words to be bandied about. It has to be authentic. If you say something but you don't do it, then it's not authentic. I was talking to a client the other day, and they were talking about dealing with their smoking. And the client said to me, I've told my children that they mustn't smoke because it's bad for your health. And I said to them, but you smoke. Oh, no, but I've told them. That's not being authentic. If it's important for your children, it's important for you. And it comes down to me for integrity. Integrity is that you say that if you say you're going to do it, that you do it, unless there's a very, very good reason. And then if there is a very good reason, that you communicate that in a timely way. That integrity for me incorporates trust, fairness, that your word is your bond. Integrity is about being genuinely very clear about that what you are is what people see. That you're not trying to hide, that there are times when you're going to be vulnerable, but you're going to be upfront about it, not as a victim, but actually recognizing that in your vulnerability you allow other people to be vulnerable. For me, enlightened leadership is very significantly about compassion. Compassion starts with you, and compassion is not a word, it's an activity, because compassion is nothing if the actions do not match what you're trying to achieve. So being compassionate to yourself, and there is a world of difference between being compassionate and being what's the word I want to use? Rather being indulgent. There's nothing about compassion that is indulgent. It is about helping people to take responsibility for themselves, but doing that in a way that empowers them. And if they need some help, providing that help in a way that doesn't keep them as a victim. Sense of purpose needs to run like this, like Brighton Rock, through your vision, through your culture. If you don't have a really strong sense of why, then things will fall apart very quickly. And profitability in and of itself is not enough. So if you're a business, what service are you providing for your clients or your customers? And why is that important? What is it you want to do for people? And if you're an organisation that provides events, a restaurant, a hotel, it's giving people that opportunity to relax and unwind, to give those people a sense of being cared for. If you're an organisation that provides a product, it's making sure that your product does what it says, that it's reliable, that it can actually help people achieve whatever their goal may be in buying your product. And if it's a service, it's about putting your customers right in the middle of the frame and making sure that you deliver over and above. But I would also say to you, enlightened leaders want to leave a legacy. And legacy is not about something when you die. Every word you speak, every action you take leaves a legacy. It leaves a little shadow, if you like. And that shadow can be a positive one or a negative one. The choice is yours. And everything in life is a choice. Even not choosing is a choice. And every choice actually has implications. There are consequences to the choices you make. And this is about you choosing actively to become an enlightened leader. Now, of course, in a presentation like this, I can't give you the whole program. It's a 10-month program, and it's been designed in that way. So all of this is covered and becomes embedded in who you are and how you operate. So if leading and managing others causes you to worry or feels like pushing a bus uphill unaided, if you're tired of doing it all yourself and you want your team to be more engaged, if you want to be the sort of leader who inspires and nurtures others, we can help you do that. We can help make you into the leader that your soul and your team desire you to be. If you're a decision maker around HR and that you have people within your team and you would like them to be that sort of leader, this program can help achieve that. Book a call now to chat it through, and that's on the website genuinely-you.com/a discovery call, or you can go to enlightenedleadership.co. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to helping you step into being an enlightened leader. Thanks very much.